Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Beautiful. And I just want to ask a question. How many people had a chance to sew their names this morning in our get-together in the cafe? Okay, the rest of you, you did not miss out because there's going to be a table in the cafe afterwards, and you can pick up a swatch of material and some embroidery thread and some instructions, and you can select a name of an enslaved person and stitch it and send it back to the quilters, and they will take care of it. Hi. I want to start. I hope so. I think so.
Hello.
Hello. And I just want to start quickly with a little token, tiny little tribute to the Mount Willing quilters at the beginning. At the beginning of the Mount Willing quilters and how they got started. So it's just a short little thing.
The quilting bee started with my mother-in-law and Miss Bessie Brooks. They were looking for a place where they could gather in. And my mother-in-law said, this in 2005, Dale just retired. And he's at the church every day. We can go up to Snow Hill and talk to Dale, and Dale would let us quilt, Miss Bessie. My mother-in-law had a way of calling me every morning between 4 and 4:30. She just called on the phone. You had a good night's sleep? Yes, ma'am. Well, how's your day? What you gonna do today? Mother, today I'm gonna do it thus. Well, Miss Bessie May and I like to come up to the church and have a conversation with you. Yes, ma'am, I'm coming up. I had some coffee and better yet, we'll eat lunch together. So mother came to the church and they had this idea that we want to start quilting. Can we use the fellowship hall? Yes, ma'am. But I did not know they were going to bring in people from all over.
Mrs. Brooks started inviting her friend. My mother started calling people. And the next thing I got up to 20 in the fellowship hall.
And then my mother-in-law said, some of them don't have a ride. Can you kick the church van and go pick them up on Thursday morning? So I started out picking up people in the church van. And they just came into the church and started quilting and singing. But I also knew that they could not come to the church and quilt without having something to eat. And I love to cook. So every Thursday, I would cook a hot meal.
So who taught you to cook?
The one and only, my mama, Fannie Mae Braxton. She could turn anything into gold from cooking.
So Thursday became my plate, where I just took a salad and whatever else I was doing. From 2005 to this day, I'm still cooking on Thursday, working with these ladies.
A little bit about the beginnings of Mount Willing quilters. Thank you. Reverend Braxton. Reverend Dale Braxton is the pastor of Snow Hill Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, in Mount Willing. He grew up in Hayneville, Alabama, about 13 miles from Mount Willing. One of 9 children raised by a single mom, Reverend Braxton attended segregated schools in Hayneville in the 1960s. He earned degrees from Athens State University and Auburn Montgomery University, and went on to serve as president of the National Convocation of the Christian Church in the United States and Canada. He's a retired educator. Over his career, he taught chemistry and biology at Lowndes County High School in Fort Deposit for 7 years and worked as a school administrator for 23 years. In 1979, he married his high school sweetheart, Mercedes Hunter, one of our quilters that you'll be hearing from later on this afternoon. And they have 4 children and 5 grandchildren and a lively, active congregation. Every month they serve meals to hundreds of people with the Lowndes County Community Center. Judge Susan Walker. Susan Ross Walker is a retired federal judge who served for 26 years as a United States Magistrate Judge in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Alabama in Montgomery. She was born in Kingsport, Tennessee. Her mom's family was from Mount Willing. Judge Walker graduated from Eckerd College in Florida, studied English language and literature at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and received her law degree from Yale University. In 1985, she moved to Montgomery to clerk on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals for famed civil rights judge Frank M. Johnson, who made landmark civil rights rulings in the fight to end segregation. After her clerkship, she was working in the Attorney General's office on a voting rights case when she met her husband, who was a lawyer on the case. She served as chief magistrate judge from 2008 to 2017. Okay, our distinguished guests, thank you. Okay, so Reverend, you have 3 churches. You have the First Church, Snow Hill Christian Church, and that's up on the hill there. But then right down the hill is the Mount Willing Church, where the quilters all meet on Thursdays and have lunch. And then you have the Hopewell Church, which is, I think, your most recent church that you have, maybe. And that's kind of the heart of this story, the Hopewell Church. And I'm wondering, how did you become the keeper of the Hopewell Church?
Well, sometime, perhaps, I guess it was around 2000, we were trying to build a walking trail and the playground at the church at Snow Hill for the children. We had something called Miracle Day at Snow Hill. And when we were having Miracle Day, I met this man who was a member of Hopewell Baptist Church, perhaps in 1978, 79. I was working bivocation. I was a bivocational pastor. I was working in this store, and he walked in and said, "Oh, you that boy that going to marry George Hunter's daughter." So I never looked up. "You that boy that's going to marry George Hunter's daughters." I never looked up. And finally, "I'm talking to you." I said, "Oh, you're talking to me? My name is Dale Chester Braxton. So if you're talking to me, that is my name." "Are you one of them biggity?" I won't go any further. Well, perhaps. But if you're really talking to me, address me as Dale Braxton or Mr. Braxton, but not boy. So we didn't get along for a while. But as soon as we started having this thing called Miracle Day at our church, he heard about it. And he said, "What is you all having now at your church?" "Something called Miracle." I said, "Yes, sir." It is something like an Amish barn raising where people come from all over the state of Alabama, Northwest Florida, to help us do some stuff for our church, some things we can't afford to do on our own. So they're coming to help us. He said, "How can I help you?" I said, "Well, it's really up to you how you want to do it." So the next week, he sends us a check for $1,500. Later on, he sent another check for $1,500. He said, "I like what you're doing." So eventually, it's not but a very few of us at the Hopewell Church, and we're not meeting that. We like what you're doing. So is there any way we can give you this church? Are you want to give us a church? Us? And he said, "Yes." But he died. He died before he put the deeds in our hands. A few months later, the only member that I know of who's the owner of the store that I was working in said he wanted one of you all to have this church, so here are the deeds. So that's how we became the owner of Hopewell Baptist Church.
So you didn't know much about the church, though, like its history or anything, or you didn't have a sense of that, or how did you find out about the church?
The church, it was just a church, in my opinion, just another church that maybe one day we could use as a welcoming center for our church. We wanted to build a community life center. we acquired this property adjacent from our church that we had worked on. So we really wanted to build a community life center so that the people in our area will have a place to come, and the children could be able to come and learn some career and technical educations, how to sew, how to cook, and the places for them to swim and a walking trail on the inside. So that's our vision, to build this community life center and etc. So when he gave us this, I said, this church now can become our welcoming center to welcome people to the community life center. I didn't have any idea what the church is all about. But one day, while I was walking from Snow Hill, I saw this man outside taking pictures. So I asked, I said, any way I can help you, sir? He said, do you know what you have here? I said, oh, I said, the church. He said, do you know what you have here? And he was from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He was I can't even think of his name right now. Susan, what was his name?
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
But he was from
He's an architectural historian.
from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and he was on his way to the Calhoun High School. And the Calhoun High School was started by Charlotte Thornton, where it was basically for African Americans, but it's one of the best high schools that was in the state of Alabama, from what we were told, where we attended. So he was headed there to look at the museum and all that stuff that was in the graveyard that was at the Calhoun High School. And he said, you don't really know what you have, so let me help you. So he started writing grants and et cetera, got it on the, it was already on the Lowndes County Historical Society. So he got it on the Alabama Historical Society. And I think that's when Susan found it, when she saw it on the Alabama Historical Society. But that's how we.
So Judge Walker,
Yes, ma'am.
how did you wind up involved in all of this, and how did you meet Reverend Braxton?
So that is my great-great-grandfather's church, where he preached for 40 years, easily, much of that before the Civil War. That church, I learned later, was built by enslaved people before the Civil War. And I didn't really know any of that. I knew that I came to Alabama, as you said, to clerk for Judge Frank Johnson in Montgomery. My mother told me that there was a church that had belonged to the Reverend David Lee, who was my great-great-grandfather, that might still be around. I remember going past this building in the 1980s, mid-1980s. We actually sort of might accidentally have opened the door and gone inside and found really nobody there. And it was empty. At that time, it didn't belong to Reverend Braxton's church. And that's really all I knew about it. We had come and gone, and that was the end of it. It didn't appear to be occupied, really. One day, I was in court, and a lawyer who was practicing in front of me on a regular case had the name David Lee, same name as my great-great-grandfather. And in these days, if you want to know something, you Google it. So when I left court, I Googled his name. I thought, well, is he related to me? I haven't heard that name for a long time. I don't know much about David Lee. Well, he wasn't related to me. But what came up on my screen was the application for state historic registry status for this church that Reverend Braxton just mentioned. And I read it, and I was, in a word, shocked. What I learned there, maybe I had some inkling that my ancestors had been slaveholders. I certainly did, but my family weren't going to talk about that. But as I read that application, I read that my great-great-grandfather had been one of, I think, 14 delegates to the convention in 1854 in Augusta, Georgia, where the Northern and Southern Baptist churches split over the issue of slavery. And I can assure you, I know what his position was, because he was a slaveholder. He had held at one time 25 people in bondage on his plantation, which is very near the church. I also learned as I read that the church had had a slave gallery. And I don't know if everybody knows what that is. I think many people do, but it would have been a segregated balcony where enslaved persons were compelled to worship. We never have found exactly where that was in the church, but it exists. So I'm worried about telling you too much, but that's how I learned about the church. Is the question how I learned about
Well,
Reverend
I think
Braxton?
the question is, so you're shocked, and what did you think you should do, or did you think you should do anything?
So, no, at first.
I think that's one of the big things too, is just how hard it is, to make that step, or to figure out what to do, or how to do it, or how to talk to somebody. And so what did you do?
Yeah, so absolutely. That is maybe the hardest thing. So I read in the same sort of paperwork that the church was now owned by the Snow Hill Christian Church, which I inferred ultimately to be a Black church after I Googled a little more. You all have had some white members, I think, but majority Black church, I think, would be fair. And that the pastor was Reverend Dale Braxton, and there sitting right in front of me was an email address. And I remember thinking, now what do I do? First of all, you appreciate the kind of fabulous irony that the church of your enslaving great-great-grandfather is now owned by the Black church nearby. So that was good, but I did try to think about what I should do. And maybe it's good I didn't think too much, because there was a point where I just sort of, and I commend this to everybody, decided to kind of take a leap. And I emailed Reverend Braxton. He remembers this as a call. I remember it as an email and then a call later. But however it happened, we ended up talking. And I don't think I knew what to say, because I don't think I knew what to do. I may have, do you remember? I may have said, I'm sorry about what transpired here. Do you recall that?
I do recall.
Okay.
I do recall.
But I think I was pretty insensitive about how it was going to hit Reverend Braxton, perhaps, to get a call from the white descendant of people who had enslaved his, at least, friends and neighbors, I guess, and the families of those individuals. I did it anyway, and I guess hope for the best. And I think what I said was, I know that this happened. I wanted to acknowledge that it occurred. And I would like to meet you and come see the church if I can. And he can take it from there,
Yes,
because
Reverend
I think his
Braxton.
feelings were much stronger even than
Take it away. You had a sort of a reaction.
Well, when I received the phone call, could have been an email. I just don't remember the email. I remember the phone call. And when I received the phone call, I had just arrived from Africa a day or so before. I just come from Africa. I just left the slave castle, where we were told about how we were captured and brought over here. So I really don't want to talk about slaves. I don't want to talk about the church. I really don't want to talk to this woman, because I was angry. I have to be honest, I was angry with what I just experienced in Africa. And as soon as I arrived home, here's this phone call about some slave gallery in a white church. Just a church. So I said to her, I think that's what I said. So let me pray about it. And I'll get
he
back.
was very gracious.
Just let me pray about it. So I prayed, and the Lord said, why not? And it was just like, I'm talking to you, why not? Why not let her come and see it? And the rest is history. Because I just believe when you listen to that inner voice, that small, still voice of God, you can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong. It was not a loud voice, just a small voice of God saying, why not?
So you took the trip to Mount Willing. You saw the Mount Willing quilters, I think, pretty quickly
Yeah,
along the way. And you looked around at the church and you decided you were going to do something or try to do something together to preserve the church, to create something. And I'm not exactly sure what your vision was at the beginning, but essentially to make this church talk about what happened and about what's happening and what should be happening in our world. And so you got a grant. You're a judge. You can get out there, get those grants, and I totally appreciate that. That was great. And you went to an archive because you had to study up. In order to write these grants, you have to know what you're talking about. So what did you find out at that archive about the church's involvement with slavery? Because I think that was something I had no real sense of when I first found out about this project, and also about your grandfather.
So I read everything I could, both in the process of that sort of fellowship briefly at Yale Law School, or the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition.
I like this grant. Say that one more time.
No, I can't.
You can't.
No, I've done it once, and I never will be able to get it out again.
But
they had this support for research, and I went up there, but I also spent a lot of time in the archives of the special collection of Samford University. These are still there, open to everyone. And what I was trying to learn was what this church was about, how it fit in to that time period, and what in the world happens that causes a church to be involved with slavery in this way. And I don't think either of us understood that part exactly, or when we came to talk about it. Dale has a better way of putting it than I do, but what was happening? So I spent a lot of hours reading about my great-great-grandfather, but also reading the correspondence back and forth among slaveholders, but in particular the preachers in the area at the time, all of this pre-Civil War. And much of what they wrote in their regular newspaper. So it became the Baptist something or other, but it was the Southwestern Baptist before that. And when you ask what I learned, I guess I learned there that this struggle over what is true and what we should do and how we should live has gone on for a long time. And in that process, a lot of people have deluded themselves about some things. I mean, this was a group of people talking about why it was okay to enslave other people. And there was so much talk that you were convinced, I was convinced, that they knew it was wrong in some fashion. And that's why they had to talk about it so much. But they would write among themselves about how slavery was beneficial to the people who were enslaved, how this was biblical, ordained by God, how it was that it was okay for them to benefit from all of this. I mean, it just sort of goes on and on and on. You've come to recognize the process that's happening. It's I guess we'd call it today confirmation bias. The more they talked to each other, the more they believed each other. And it just was remarkable to me how it came to be fine to do this.
And they encouraged to building slave galleries and separating the races.
They did. Now, I have to admit that I enjoyed part of it very much, which is a terrible thing probably, but they had a terrible time, as it turns out. So this is an area, we're talking about now the Alabama Baptist Association, which ranged from, all the way down to Greenville in the north, in the south, and up to the Prattville, Autauga County area in the north, and then across to nearly Dallas, part of Dallas County, and back over here to this area. And they met with each other and talked with each other, and all were important and were, Confederate attorneys general and justices and just on and on and on. But what I sort of enjoyed was it became very clear to me that at that time, the Black population had grown to the size that it was much greater than the white population, particularly in these churches. And you could hear in what they were saying that they were terrified because they were losing control. And it was a lot about where people are and how do we manage these folks, and demonizing people who didn't behave properly in church or in the slave galleries, or why people are leaving the slave galleries to walk around and talk to each other. They had a very tenuous handle, I think, really much more than we realize. So there was considerable Black resistance that took place in this period before the Civil War that you never hear about. And it is pre-civil rights era organizing almost. And then ultimately, and this was important to me, this comes to be a group of people who formerly were enslaved, who end up starting their own churches after the war ends. And they become the people who bring you the civil rights movement. Churches in this association included the powerful Montgomery churches, the others where you have a core of African-American individuals who have learned how to navigate this system and come to be extremely powerful in their own right, and brought us this civil rights movement.
So the other thing that you discovered were these church books, I think they're called. I think we have a picture of a church book. What did you describe this, and how did you feel when you saw this?
So yeah, this one's from Coosa River, so Wetumpka. So Samford University in that special collection has some of the actual church books from these churches in the Alabama Baptist Association, which was the most powerful church association. And everybody who was anybody who was white, belonged to this church, it seemed. There were to the Baptist church in that time. So Samford went around and collected these books. The Baptist church at the time had, maybe still for all I know, had kept meticulous records of what was happening and who were their members and so forth. And when I looked around, I couldn't find a church book for the church we're talking about, for Hopewell, sadly. Although there are, my great-great-grandfather's a pastor of 5 different churches in the area, and there are some for those other churches. But I found lots of either the actual church books or microfilmed photographs of the church books. And as I looked at them, I thought, well, wait a minute. There are a lot of names in here. And up at the top, it says colored female or colored male. Once I think I saw enslaved male, enslaved female, but typically it was done like this. And this is unusual, what you see here, because there are last names. Most of the time it would be, just to take a name, Eliza, servant of. They're very careful. They did only once did I see slave of. Usually it was servant of, as though it had been voluntary. And the individual who was the enslaved.
So this is so rare because before this time in the census, Blacks were not included.
That's right. If you look back at what they call the slave schedules in the 2 pre-Civil War censuses, what's plural of census? Anyway.
Censi.
Censi that I know about, it would just say numbers, genders, age, and so forth. No names whatsoever. No way to identify those people. And then all of a sudden, here they are.
So you see these, I think you told me that you were with your law clerk, Mallory. And you, once again, it's like finding out about Hopewell. Should we do something?
Yes.
You know, what are we going to do? I mean, I think this is the big thing. It's these points that we come to, and you have a decision to make. You know, am I going to go for it, or am I just going to kind of let it slide? And you guys went for it. And Mallory, well, it was at the time of George Floyd, and a lot was going on in our culture. And I think you told me that the first idea was to have the names said, or wasn't, or some other idea, but Mallory said, well, the Mount Willing Quilters sew their names. And
She got to sew their names.
Yeah.
She figured that out.
and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Okay, back to you. You get this idea. Now, what do you think? Here's another idea from the judge and Mallory.
He thought,
and
please stop
and you've got to
talking
go to
me."
the women you've got to go to the women and say, you want to do this project? What was your reaction? What was their reaction?
We thought about it. And then while we were thinking about it, I think I bounced it off on the group about the fact that the judges found these names. They have this name called this project, about sew their names, to try to bring life back to those persons who've been enslaved. And the group said, okay, let's try it.
Was there any suspicion or weirdness about it? It seems
It
like
was difficult because we were not really sure, and judge, no offense, what the judge was up to. We had to come together, and we believed in her, but we said, wonder what is it? What's the underlying motives of her wanting to do this? Is there something? What is she going to get out of this? Because we knew we lived in a community, and some of the whites going to say, you know, all you're digging, what you're doing now, you're rehashing some stuff that's already been gone under the bridge. So when with the courts, we talked about it for a while, and we sing and pray all the time at the church. So eventually we said, go for it. Talked with the judge, and they came down and we talked about it. We also, before we said yes, we also thought about the fact that, you know, the white men have always done this to us. We always said, use the scriptures to beat us over our heads. Slaves, obey your masters. They've always done something to try to get ahead. So I said, just let us trust the judge. Let's just try. So the judge came down, met with the quilters, and for somehow the quilters fell in love with the judge and Mallory. And so it's been from that time until
Particularly
now,
Mallory.
we have been working with a judge.
And the idea of commissioning quilters, art quilters, came up, and we're going to be talking about that later this afternoon. I want to ask you about growing up in Hayneville in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. What was that like for you? You went to segregated schools. What was your experience? And what was going on around you politically? I mean, there was a lot of action.
Of course, I was born in 1956. Started the school when I was 5. Started Russell Elementary School. It was difficult days. The white children would be going to Hayneville High, K through 12. They have a bus that would take them to school. They would have the brand new books. They had a cafeteria with hot food. But of course, I walked over 2.5 miles from the racetrack to Russell School. Rain, shine, sleet, or snow. Hands cold, toes cold. And sometimes we had heat, and sometimes we did not have heat. The books that the white children had became our books when it was time for new books. They would send them down to Russell, to us. The white children always had the best. My mother was a domestic worker, but my mother always had her mindset on things above. Always encouraged us, no matter what, you are somebody. My mother also worked for Mrs. Vaughn, who owned the cash store. The cash store was the store that Jonathan Daniel was killed in. My mother also worked at the house of one of the teachers who taught at Hangville High. By this time, I was getting ready for integration. And I just knew that my mother was not going to allow us to ride the bus to the Calhoun School when we could walk to Hangville High. So I said, Mama, is it possible? No, we didn't use the word, is it possible? Can we go to Hangville High? Hell no. That's her, hell no, you're not going to Hangville High. And I often wondered why she would not allow us to go to Hangville High School. So one day, I got the nerve, said, Mama, why you would not let us to go to Hangville High? They were integrating the schools. She said, son, I was protecting you. One day I was ironing. I was ironing this white man's clothes. He came in from school and said to this particular lady, there's some smart ends, but he used the word, smart ends that came to that school. And my mama said right then, he forgot about that she was ironing. And she said, I made up my mind in my mind that day, you were not going to Hangville High because I didn't want a brand that I won't call it, say what my mama said. I would take that hot iron, I would have brand him, and you all wouldn't have anywhere to live because I would have beat him, calling you all a smart end. To know my mother, whatever came up, came out. Whether you were black or white, it did not matter to my mom. You were not going to do anything to hurt the 9 of us. With 9 children, $88 welfare check, a black book in the store, where she'll go to the store and buy groceries. They'll write down everything you bought. And every month, it was a carryover. It was never enough to pay the monthly bill. But I had a praying mother. Never shall forget Christmas. She called us all in around we had a 1 room in a kitchen, shack. She called us in and she said, you all are going to have something for Christmas. I'm not sure what it will be, but you're going to have something. I said, Mama, all I want is a spinning top. You're going to get something for Christmas. I'm not sure what it would be, but you're going to get something. But I never, ever want you to live where you have to depend on a welfare check, to go to a grocery store, and have to write your name down on everything, sign papers you're not sure about. She said, I worked hard to get this piece of land. I worked hard to get this house. Never sell it. Never sell this piece of land, because I want you to have some collateral to fall back on. That was my mama with 9 children. It was difficult, but we made it. My mother could take the commodities. The commodity that came from the federal government, the cheese, the spam, the split peas, the pinto beans, the great northern beans, the canned chicken, the canned pork, and make anything out of it. We never went hungry, because when we would walk into the house, she worked all day at this lady house at the cafe. She would come home and we would have oatmeal cookies, tea cakes, or she would have cooked the pinto beans and taken the spam and boiled the salt out and barbecued. And we had in it, we never went hungry. And she said to us as children, whether you have steak or potato, or whether you have syrup and bread, or milk and bread, you are full. You're not going to bed hungry. Just enjoy the meal. And whatever you do, never ever stop praising God. And she said these things to me, to us, the 9 of us. There are 3 things that your mom will teach you. First thing is you're gonna know the Lord. You're gonna love the Lord. You're gonna know God for yourself. The second thing, you're going to get an education. And the third thing is, when you get an education, that's your ticket out of poverty. And whatever you do, if you have a piece of cornbread and your brother or your sister don't have cornbread, you make sure you break that piece of cornbread, that all 9 of you will have cornbread. We had hand-me-down clothes when she worked for the white people. When they gave her clothes, she brought them home. She washed them, she starched them, she ironed them, and made sure we had what we needed. There was the lady who owned the cash store. When I was a child, I don't know why Miss Gents took a liking to me. I don't know why. But when I was in the elementary school, she brought me to the store, taught me how to rotate the grocery in the store, taught me how to cut the pork chops, taught me how to do the neck bone. I have the knives right now in my house. So when she died, I have the knives. She had willed the knives to me. I have the knives in a shadow box in my house, and you walk into my kitchen. She taught, and she would write me letters in college. I didn't do well the first semester in college because I was not at home, and the rules of my mother are being in the house by midnight. I didn't have to have those rules anymore. So I did some of my own stuff for the first semester, and I got a letter from my mom, and the letter said, Dale, here is $5. Don't worry about coming home for Thanksgiving. You may get home for Christmas, because I was 3 hours away from home. I was in Athens, Alabama, from Fort Worth. You may get home for Christmas, but you're going to get a degree, even in basket weaving. So you might as well study, because if you lose the scholarship, you belong to me. Got a letter the next day from Miss Gents Varner. This is the white woman. Dear Dale, Fannie Mae told me that the midterm grade came in. You are not in Athens to play. You are there to learn. Sign, your white mama, Jens Bonner. $3 was in the.
Go back after this and look up Varner's Cash
Yeah,
Store.
there's a whole story there.
Very important in the civil rights movement.
So one day, this lady said, I love you. And she's white. I've been telling you, I've been saying, I love you, Dale, all along. But this killing took place at your store. So I want to know, were you involved? So I got in my car, drove to her house, walked on the back porch, because you're going to drive in her yard as you go to the back. It's not there. No one ever went in her front. And she was in her den, knocked on the door. Come on in, Dale. Come on in. Went in, we sat. I said, Miss Jens, you've always said to me you love me. But there's been something bothering me in my spirit. I just need to ask you, were you involved in the killing of Jonathan Daniels? She said, I knew you one day you were going to come and ask me that question. I just knew you were coming to ask me that question one day. She got up, the den, walked into the bedroom, had the rotary phones. I heard her make a phone call. I assume it was to her daughter. Dale is here. He asking about do you want these papers? She said, no, Mom, I don't want them. She went and brought me all these newspaper clippings from the trials and everything that had happened at her store. She said, Dale, why would I be involved in killing another person? I rented the back of my store out to Ms. Dot Jackson. Mr. Coleman came, she called his name, Mr. Coleman came to the back of the store. Ms. Abel and others said to me, Ms. Jen, there's going to be a killing at your store. The cotton gin was right behind the store. They had heard the people talking about a killing, because the jail was next to the cotton gin. So they heard about the fact that Jonathan Daniel and others was coming to the store, Ruby sales and etc., coming to the store to buy a coat. So Ms. Abel said, Ms. Jens, there's going to be a killing at your store. Oh, Abel, there's not going to be no killing at my store. And lo and behold, when the jailers were released from the Hayneville jail, walked around to the store, Mr. Coleman came through the back of the store and said, the store is closed. Pulled his gun, Jonathan Daniel jumped in front of Ruby's sale, and the rest is history. So growing up, that was your question. It was rough. Because they could do anything they wanted to you. And in the courts, we really didn't have a voice. We really didn't have a voice. Around from my house where I lived was the First Baptist Church. On Sunday afternoons, there'd be mass meetings going on. People would come from everywhere for those mass meetings. Right next to my house, Woman Andrew McCall, the first Black woman who registered to vote, and she was able to vote. That same night, her dad's store, Reverend Wes McCall, blind man's store, was burned. We woke up in the night hearing all the pop, 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 pop. His store had been burned that night because his daughter had registered to vote. So growing up in Lowndes, it was hard. But I thank God I had a praying mother who said to us, you will be somebody, and you are somebody. Out of my 9 siblings, my oldest now dead. Eugene was a chef cook and a registered nurse. My second brother is now dead. John was on his way to Tuskegee University. He got hit in the eye by a white guy passing by, throwing a rock. He was blind in one eye. So then he had an accident, and John was paralyzed for 28 years, 3 months, and 30-some days. 20, yeah. So he died. My fourth brother, the fourth person, Fred, went to college in North Carolina. My sister Marion is now dead, but Marion finished Alabama State, and she was a special education teacher. She had a master's degree from Alabama State. I knew I could not go to college because of the fact that all of my mama had 2 already in college, so there was no way she could send Dale to college on the amount of $10 a week, $80 a month where she was working. Could not do that. But there was a career fair at Calhoun High School. And during that career fair at the Calhoun High School, I sat on the bleachers because I knew I could not go to college. I sat on the bleachers because I was not going to college. I was going to be a pallet. And pallets are little crates that you haul stuff on. I was going to work at the pallet factory. So I was not going to go to school. But as I was sitting on the bleachers, something spoke and said, go over to that table, Athens College table. I sat there. The voice came again, go to Athens College table. I sat there. The third time the voice got loud, go to that table. So I got up and I went over to the table, the only white school that was in the gymnasium that day. So I went over to the table and the gentleman said to me, are you interested in going to school? I can't afford to. I didn't ask you that. Are you interested in going to school? I can't afford to. I didn't ask you that. Are you interested? Yes, sir, I'm interested. Feel this. I filled the application out. He went to the counselor's office, got my transcript, and all that was done that day. Got my transcript, took it back to Athens. Within 2 weeks, I got an acceptance letter. And there was a professor at Athens College by the name of Angie Nazaritan. We call him Miss Ian. Sent me a round-trip bus ticket to come to Athens to look at the campus. And when I got to Athens, an old white man was on a walking stick. I don't know whether he had a peg leg or what. He was just came out. You Dale Braxton? I am. You interested in coming here? Yes. And he pulled all this paperwork out. NDSL loans, scholarships, and etc. All you get is sign. So I signed. Graduated from high school, went to Athens. 3 years later, at the age of 19, I'm now teaching chemistry. All of it history. Long way around to tell you my story, but that's my story.
It's a good story. Thank you. Thank you for that story. I think we are going to take a break. Is that correct, Chris? Yes. Okay, I'm getting the word. Anyway, both of you, thank you for being so forthcoming and interesting. Really appreciate all that you've done. And
Thank you.
We'll take about a 10-minute break and then start back up